The transmission crackled across every registered frequency in the known galaxy, which, if you knew anything about the Galactic Council, meant something had gone spectacularly, catastrophically wrong. Again, High Chancellor Morpheus, a Vreline with more ice talks than common sense, appeared on screens from the outer rim to the core worlds, all 7 of his eyes blinking in that uncoordinated way that meant he was absolutely terrified. His translator device kept glitching, probably because his voice was shaking so badly. "Attention all member species, protectorates and unaffiliated civilizations," Morpheus began, his primary eyes talk twitching. "This is your quarterly reminder regarding Galactic Protocol 777 subsection Human. The rule remains absolute, unchanged and non-negotiable. Do not disturb the humans." Someone in the background of the transmission muttered something that sounded like, "Oh God, not again." Morpheus continued, ignoring the interruption. "We understand that some of you, particularly newer species to the galactic community, might think this rule is, how do the humans say it? Hogwash. Yes, hogwash. You look at their primitive chemical rockets, their fondness for explosions, their baffling obsession with putting flags on things, and you think, how dangerous could they possibly be?" He paused, letting that question hang in the void like a corpse in space. "Let me remind you of the Zelthrone incident. The Zelthrone Empire had 47 worlds, 300 warships, and an undefeated military record spanning 6,000 years. Note my use of past tense. They made the mistake of kidnapping one human scientist for his research. One single human." Morpheus's ice talks drooped. "The Zelthrones are now extinct, and their homeworld is a human petting zoo. Literally, they turned it into a recreational park for Earth animals called Zelthrone Safari Adventure, and it has a 4.7-star rating on their ridiculous review websites." The feed showed images of fluffy Earth creatures called sheep grazing on what used to be the Zelthrone Imperial Palace. "Or perhaps you have heard of the Curaxis swarm," Morpheus went on, his voice climbing higher. 60 billion warriors, hive-minded, absolutely ruthless. They made the mistake of establishing a colony on a planet humans had already claimed, but had not yet visited. The humans arrived, saw the Curaxis, and you know what they did. They introduced them to something called barbecue sauce. The Curaxis are now a delicacy at human cookouts, and their former queen works at a Earth restaurant called Red Lobster. Morpheus leaned closer to the camera, all 7 eyes wide. "The rule exists for your protection. Stay away from human space. Do not engage human vessels. Do not threaten human colonies. Do not even look at humans funny. They are insane. They hold grudges, and they think violence is a recreational activity. This has been your quarterly reminder." Morpheus out. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, most species nodded sagely and made absolutely certain their navigation computers had human space marked in big flashing "Do not enter" zones. Most species, not all. Commander Vexlith of the Kralix Dominion watched the transmission end and then did something that would later be described by military historians as cosmically stupid. He laughed. Not a polite chuckle, mind you, but a full-throated, 4-chambered Kralix battle laugh that echoed through the bridge of his warship, the Crimson Talon. His scales rippled with amusement, shifting from deep purple to a mocking shade of orange. "Humans," he said, testing the word like it tasted funny. "Humans. These soft pink, fragile creatures have the entire galaxy cowering like hatchlings." His second-in-command, a cautious female named Cythera, shifted uncomfortably on her command couch. Her scales remained a worried shade of gray. "Commander, the reports are consistent across multiple species and time periods. Perhaps there is wisdom in cowardice," Vexlith interrupted, his neck frills extending in a display of dominance. "The Krolix did not conquer 17-star systems by being afraid of bedtime stories. Cythera, look at the data objectively. Humans have slower reflexes than us. Their bones break easier. They require constant hydration and a frankly embarrassing amount of sleep. They are biologically inferior in every measurable way." His tactical officer, young Renth, spoke up from his station. "Sir, with respect, the Zelthrone were also biologically superior, and the Curaxis, and the Morthene Collective, and all of whom grew complacent." Vexlith cut him off, rising from his command throne. He was a magnificent specimen of Kralix evolution, 3 meters tall, covered in armored scales, with claws that could shred tritanium and a jaw that could bite through starship hull plating. His species had evolved on a death world where everything tried to kill everything else, and the Kralix had won. They were apex predators, conquerors, warriors born, and this warrior was bored. "Humans got lucky," Vexlith declared, pacing the bridge with predatory grace. A few victories against unprepared opponents and suddenly the whole galaxy treats them like gods. Well, I do not believe in gods, and I certainly do not believe in human exceptionalism. They bleed, they die, they are made of meat, just like everything else. Cythera's scales went from gray to pale white, which in Krallich's body language meant you are about to do something phenomenally stupid and I want no part of it. Commander, she tried again, her voice careful. Perhaps we should consult with Dominion High Command before. High Command is 3 weeks away by quantum comm, Vexlith said dismissively, waving one clawed hand. And I am a ranked commander with full discretionary authority in this sector. Besides, this is not an act of war. This is merely a field test. A scientific experiment, if you will. His eyes, all 6 of them, gleamed with ambition. I am going to prove that humans are not special. Renth made a sound that might have been a whimper. The holographic display flickered to life in the center of the bridge, showing a 3-dimensional map of the local sector. Vexlith's claws danced across the control surface, zooming in on human-controlled space. There, he said, highlighting a small blue dot on the fringes of human territory. Mining outpost Bellerophon. Population approximately 200 humans. Defenses, minimal. Strategic value, negligible. Perfect. Cythera leaned forward, studying the readout despite her better judgment. It is remarkably isolated. No military installations within 3 light years. The nearest human patrol route is 4 days away at their fastest cruiser speed. Exactly, Vexlith said, his scales rippling with satisfaction. A soft target. We go in, we take control, we extract whatever resources they have been mining, and we leave before anyone even notices. Quick, clean, efficient. And when we return to Dominion space with human prisoners and plundered cargo, High Command will see that these creatures are not the invincible monsters the Council makes them out to be. His tactical officer pulled up additional data. The outpost appears to be mining rare earth elements, platinum, iridium, some exotic compounds we do not have classification for. Valuable, but not worth starting an interstellar incident over, sir. There will be no incident, Vexlith assured him, though his tone suggested he would not mind if there was one. We will be gone before the humans can mount a response. And even if they do send someone, what are they going to do? We have the Crimson Talon, a Krallich's destroyer-class vessel with enough firepower to level a continent. They have a mining outpost with what? Probably some construction equipment and maybe a few personal sidearms. He pulled up the outpost specifications. The station was small, modular, the kind of prefabricated structure that could be assembled in a few months. No shield generators, no weapon emplacements, no sign of military presence whatsoever. It looked in every measurable way like easy prey. Navigation, Vexlith commanded, settling back into his throne. Plot a course to Bellerophon. Maximum stealth approach. I want to be in orbit before they even know we are there. Sir, Cythera tried one last time, her voice almost pleading. Are you absolutely certain about this? We could at least run more reconnaissance, gather intelligence on human response protocols. I am certain that I am tired of living in fear of myths, Vexlith said coldly. Engage engines. We leave immediately. The Crimson Talon, 300 meters of Krallich's military engineering, turned silently in space and began accelerating toward human territory. In the weapons bay, the crew began loading ammunition. In the medical bay, the doctor began preparing restraints for human prisoners. In the engine room, the chief engineer muttered a prayer to the old gods, because unlike his commander, he had actually read the reports about what happened to species who bothered humans. All of them. Every single horrible one. The ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, and the bridge crew settled in for the 3-hour journey to Outpost Bellerophon. Behind them, the Galactic Council's warning beacon continued broadcasting its message into the void, unheeded and unheard. Do not disturb the humans. Do not disturb the humans. Do not disturb the humans. Vexlith had the communications officer turn off the repeating signal. The noise was annoying, and he had a point to prove. The Crimson Talon raced toward its destiny, carrying a crew of 47 Krallich's warriors who had absolutely no idea what they were about to unleash. The Crimson Talon dropped out of faster-than-light travel exactly where Vexlith had planned, directly above Outpost Bellerophon. The mining station hung in orbit around a reddish dwarf planet looking about as threatening as a floating tin can. Scan complete, Commander, Renth reported, his voice tinged with confusion. No active weapons, no defense satellites, no shield generators. They are not even running encrypted communications. It is like they are not trying to hide anything. Vexlith felt a small twinge of something that might have been suspicion, but he crushed it immediately. This was exactly what he had expected. Human complacency, human weakness, life signs, he asked. 237 humans, all concentrated in the main habitat modules, some in the mining tunnels on the planet below. No soldiers, no military equipment. Sir, this is almost too easy. That was the problem, was it not? It was too easy. But Vexlith refused to back down now. Not when victory was literally hanging in space right in front of him. Deploy boarding teams, he ordered. Non-lethal force only. I want prisoners for interrogation, not corpses for excuses. The Kralik strike teams were professionals. They breached the outpost's docking bay without triggering a single alarm, cut through the inner airlock with plasma torches, and stormed into the main corridor with weapons raised and ready, and found themselves facing a middle-aged human male in coveralls holding a cup of something steaming. The human looked at the 47 heavily armed Kralix warriors, looked at his cup, then looked back at the warriors. Huh, he said. You guys are pretty big. Anyone want coffee? Vexlith pushed through his troops, his impressive bulk filling the corridor. He had expected screaming, panic, maybe some desperate attempt at resistance. Instead, this human was offering beverages. I am Commander Vexlith of the Kralix Dominion, he announced, his translator rendering his words in perfect Earth English. This outpost is now under our control. You will surrender all personnel and resources immediately, or face the consequences. The human took a sip of his coffee. Name's Jameson Pike. I run this place. And yeah, okay, I guess you are in control. Not much I can do about that, what with you having all the guns and the scary teeth and whatnot. This was wrong. This was all wrong. Where was the fear? The begging? The desperate attempts to negotiate? You do not seem concerned, Vexlith observed, his scales rippling with confusion. Pike shrugged. Oh, I am plenty concerned. But you know what my dad used to say. He used to say, Jameson, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. And when alien murder lizards invade your space station, you offer them coffee and hope they are reasonable about things. He took another sip. You guys are going to be reasonable, right? Cythera stepped forward, her weapon trained on Pike. Commander, something is very wrong here. Humans do not act like this. Maybe he is in shock, Vexlith suggested. Though he did not believe it himself. Pike laughed. Shock? Nah, buddy. I have been running mining operations in deep space for 12 years. You are not even the weirdest thing I have seen this month. Last week we had a methane leak that made everyone hallucinate singing space whales. Compared to that, you are practically normal. Vexlith's tactical computer was screaming warnings at him, but he could not figure out what was wrong. Everything was going according to plan. The outpost was secured. The humans were not resisting. So why did Jameson Pike look like a man who knew a punchline that Vexlith had not heard yet? Pike set down his coffee cup on a nearby railing with a gentleness that seemed absurd given the circumstances. So, Commander Vexlith, before we get into the whole hostage situation thing, would you mind if I made one quick phone call? Just to, let folks know what is happening. Every tactical instinct Vexlith possessed screamed at him to say no. But his pride, his damnable Kralix pride, would not let him show fear in front of a single unarmed human. You wish to call for help? Vexlith asked, amused. By all means. Call whoever you like. We have jammed all long-range communications. Your distress signal will go nowhere. Pike smiled, and it was not a nice smile. Oh, I am not calling for help, Commander. That would take too long anyway. I am just calling to give someone a heads up. Professional courtesy, you understand. He pulled out a small communication device, the kind humans used for local transmissions. Vexlith's communications officer confirmed it was working on a short-range frequency only. Nothing that could reach beyond the local system. Pike pressed a button. The device chirped. Someone answered almost immediately. Hey there, Pike said cheerfully. This is Outpost Bellerophon. Just wanted to let you know we have some visitors. Big scaly fellows. Lots of teeth. Terrible timing. They seem to think they are in charge now. A female voice on the other end of the line said something Vexlith could not quite make out. Pike glanced at Vexlith. What species did you say you were again? Kralix. Vexlith growled, annoyed at being ignored. Kralix. Pike repeated into the device. Yeah, about 40 or 50 of them. Full military setup. Warship in orbit. The whole deal. He paused, listening. Uh-huh. Yup. Okay. Will do. See you in a few. He ended the call and pocketed the device. Well, Commander, good news and bad news. Good news is, You have got about 8 minutes before this situation changes significantly. Bad news is, you have got about 8 minutes before this situation changes significantly. Vexlith's scales flushed dark red with anger. You are bluffing. There is no military presence in this sector, that you know of, Pike corrected helpfully. That was when Rent's voice came over the command channel, tight with panic. Commander, I am detecting multiple faster-than-light signatures. Incoming. Fast. Very, very fast. Vexlith's blood went cold. Pike picked up his coffee again. Yeah. About that, you really should have read the fine print on human space. We do not do military outposts anymore. Too obvious. Too expensive. Instead, we just sort of have military everywhere. More efficient that way. How many ships? Vexlith demanded, looking at Cythera. Sensors are having trouble getting a count, sir. The interferences. Commander, they are jamming our scanners. I cannot get a clear reading. Pike helpfully held up 7 fingers. 7 ships. Vexlith said, relieved. The Crimson Talon could handle 7 human vessels easily. Pike shook his head and added 3 more fingers. 10. Pike kept adding fingers. Then he ran out of fingers and started using his toes, sitting down to pull off his boots. Vexlith watched in horror as Pike counted higher and higher. How many ships are coming? Vexlith whispered. Pike smiled. Enough. The first human ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel 3 kilometers off the Crimson Talon's starboard bow, which in naval terms was basically sitting on top of them. It should have been impossible. FTL exit calculations required extensive computation, careful calibration and safety margins measured in thousands of kilometers. Appearing that close to another vessel required either insane precision or insane recklessness. The humans, Vexlith was learning, had mastered both. Evasive maneuvers, he roared, sprinting back toward his ship through the docking tunnel. The second, third and fourth human ships appeared in a perfect triangular formation around the Crimson Talon before his pilot could even touch the controls. The 5th and 6th ships materialized above and below. The 7th through 20th surrounded them in a sphere. Vexlith had not known humans had 20 military vessels in this entire sector. According to intelligence reports, they should not have, but here they were. And they were not standard warships. These were smaller, meaner and covered in weapons that Vexlith's tactical computer could not even identify properly. The classification kept changing. Missile launcher, no weight. Railgun, no weight. Plasma cannon, no weight. Arrow, unnamed weapon system. This is Captain Helena Frost of the USC Retribution. A woman's voice came over the open channel, bright and cheerful like she was announcing a birthday party. To the Kryolix vessel currently making a series of poor life choices. You have approximately 10 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Failure to comply will result in us making you comply, and trust me, you do not want that. It involves math, and the math is not in your favor. Vexlith made a decision that was either tactically brilliant or proof that he had completely lost his mind. All weapons fire at will. The Crimson Talon's main plasma batteries opened up, lancing toward the nearest human ship with enough firepower to vaporize a Sol Moon. The human ship dodged, not with thrusters, not with fancy maneuvering, but by simply not being where the shot was going. It was like the vessel knew where Vexlith was aiming before he did. Then the humans fired back. What happened next would be described in Kralek's military archives as the worst 4 minutes in our species' naval history. The human weapons were not normal. One ship fired something that looked like a net made of lightning. Another launched projectiles that split into dozens of smaller projectiles mid-flight, each one tracking a different target. A third vessel opened up with what appeared to be a beam of solidified sound that made the Crimson Talon's hull ring like a bell. But the worst, the absolute worst, was the ship that fired actual physical projectiles. Not missiles, not torpedoes, just chunks of metal accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. Who uses kinetic weapons in space combat anymore? Vexlith screamed as his ship's shields buckled under the assault. Humans, apparently. Cythera screamed back, desperately trying to coordinate point defense systems that were never designed to track targets moving that fast. The Crimson Talon shuddered as something punched through the shield and carved a trench across the dorsal hull. Alarms wailed. Fires broke out on 3 decks. The engineering section reported a plasma conduit breach, and through it all, Captain Frost kept talking in that infuriatingly cheerful voice. Kralek's vessel, you are now down to 15% shield strength. I am legally obligated to remind you that surrender is still an option. We have wonderful prisoner of war accommodations. 3 meals a day, exercise periods, and our brig has a 4.2-star rating on Yelp. One of Vexlith's ships exploded, Not the Crimson Talon, but one of the 3 support frigates he had brought along. It just came apart in a beautiful, terrible fireball that lit up local space. Okay. Correction, Frost continued. You are now down to 1 frigate and 12% shield strength on your main vessel. Would anyone like to reconsider their current tactical approach? Vexlith's worldview, carefully constructed over decades of military superiority and species-wide arrogance, shattered like his ship's shields. The humans were not lucky. They were not exaggerated myths. They were not primitive creatures playing at war. They were artists, and violence was their canvas. What made it worse, so much worse, was that the humans were having fun. Vexlith could hear their communications chatter. His ship's computer was still trying to decrypt their tactical channels when he realized the humans were not even bothering to encrypt them. They were talking in the clear, like they did not care who was listening. Retribution actual to Falcon 3. You seeing this? Big guy at 270 is trying to run. Copy that, actual. Want me to clip his wings, or are we doing the thing? Let's do the thing. Haven't done the thing in weeks. Oh hell yes, the thing! Vexlith had no idea what the thing was, but it sounded bad. 2 human fighters, tiny craft that should not have been able to survive in a capital ship engagement, suddenly accelerated to speeds that made his sensors think they had jumped to FTL. They wove through the Crimson Talon's defensive fire like they were dancing, not dodging. Then they fired missiles, except these missiles did not explode. They attached themselves to his remaining frigate's engines and shut them down. Just turned them off. Like flipping a light switch, the frigate went dark and began drifting, completely helpless. Falcon 3 to all units, that's a bingo on the thing. Somebody owes me 20 credits. Nobody owes you anything, Stevens. We all knew you could pull it off. Still counts. Vexlith slammed his claws on the command console. Helmsman, full retreat. Get us out of here. His pilot's claws flew across the controls. The Crimson Talon's massive engines flared to life, pushing the ship toward the edge of the gravity well where they could jump to FTL and escape this nightmare. Except they could not, because 3 human ships had somehow positioned themselves exactly where Vexlith needed to go, their weapon systems already locked on. Trying alternate vector, his helmsman reported, his voice cracking with panic. Same result. Humans already there, waiting. Like they had read the navigation plot before Vexlith's own crew had finished calculating it. They are predicting our moves, Cythera said quietly, her scales gone completely white. Commander, they have hacked our navigation computer. They know where we are going to run before we do. That is impossible. Our systems are quantum encrypted with triple redundancy. A new voice joined the human chatter. Older, male, with an accent Vexlith's translator struggled to place. Retribution. This is Mongoose. I have control of the Kralix nav system, feeding you their exit vectors now. Beautiful work, Mongoose. Remind me to buy you a beer when we get home. Make it whiskey and you got a deal, Captain. They were inside his ship, inside his systems. The Crimson Talon, pride of the Kralix Dominion, was being picked apart by humans who treated military operations like a casual conversation between friends. Another impact rocked the ship. This time nothing exploded. Instead, his weapon systems just stopped working. Every gun, every missile tube, every defensive battery went dark simultaneously. Engineering to bridge, came a panicked voice. Sir, something just shut down our entire weapons grid. We are locked out of our own systems. Well, obviously someone shut it down, Vexlith roared. Turn it back on. We are trying, sir. But the lockout is using our own security protocols against us. It is like the ship thinks we are the ones not authorized to use the weapons. On the tactical display, Vexlith watched as human ships moved into a perfect formation around the Crimson Talon. Not aggressive, not defensive, just positioned with mathematical precision to control every possible escape route. His superior Kralix technology, his apex predator reflexes, his species' thousands of years of military tradition. All of it meant nothing. The humans had turned his own ship into a prison, and they had done it in under 5 minutes. Retribution actual to Kralix Commander. Captain Frost's voice returned, still cheerful, still polite. Sir, your shields are down, your weapons are offline, your engines are compromised, and I have a marine boarding team that is really bored. They have been practicing breaching techniques all week and they are just dying to try out their new toys. Please make this easy on everyone and surrender your vessel. Nobody else has to get hurt today. Vexlith looked around his bridge. Half his stations were offline. Fires burned in 3 separate locations. His crew stared at him with expressions that ranged from terror to barely concealed accusations of "I told you so." His second frigate exploded. The humans had not even fired on it. The crew had detonated their own reactor rather than face capture. Vexlith understood the impulse. The main view screen flickered to life without anyone on the bridge activating it. Another human hack. Another reminder that Vexlith controlled exactly nothing anymore. A human female appeared on screen, probably in her late 30s by their aging standards, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that sparkled with what could only be described as aggressive friendliness. She wore a dark blue uniform with enough insignia to indicate serious rank, and she was smiling like she had just won a prize. "Hello there," Captain Helena Frost said brightly. "I am Captain Frost, and before we go any further, I just want to say thank you for making today interesting. We have been running drills for 3 weeks straight, and honestly everyone was getting pretty tired of shooting at simulated targets. Real combat practice is so much better for morale." Vexlith's translator had to process that twice to make sure it had understood correctly. She was thanking him for attacking a human outpost because it relieved her crew's boredom. "I am Commander Vexlith," he managed, trying to salvage some dignity from this disaster. "I am authorized to negotiate terms of—" "Oh no, sweetheart, you are not," Frost interrupted, her smile never wavering. "You are authorized to surrender unconditionally and hope we are in a good mood. Which, lucky for you, we are. It is actually beautiful out here today. Well, not out here in the void of space obviously, but back home it is supposed to be gorgeous. My wife is taking our daughter to the park. I got to video call them before we jumped. Very wholesome. Really put me in a forgiving headspace." She leaned forward slightly. "So here is how this works, Commander. You are going to order your crew to stand down. You are going to open your airlocks, and you are going to let my Marines board your ship without any fuss. In exchange, nobody dies today except the guys who blew up their own frigate, and honestly that is on them, not us." Vexlith's pride made one last desperate attempt at resistance. "And if I refuse? If I order my crew to fight to the last warrior?" Frost's smile did not change, but something in her eyes did. Something cold and old and absolutely merciless. "Then I stop being nice," she said simply. "And Commander, you really do not want to see what happens when I stop being nice. Ask the Zelthron. Oh wait, you cannot, because they do not exist anymore." She let that sink in for exactly 3 seconds. "So what is it going to be? Option A, everyone lives and we all go home with a funny story? Or Option B, I let my Marines off their leash and your ship becomes a training exercise in hostile boarding actions? And just so you know, they have been working on something they call the Flashbang Express, and I am very curious to see if it actually works." "The Flashbang Express?" Vexlith repeated weakly. "It involves a lot of flashbangs," Frost explained. "Like a genuinely inadvisable number of flashbangs, and some smoke grenades, and possibly a few Marines on roller skates. But that part is still under review." Behind Vexlith, Cythera made a decision that would save her career and possibly her life. "We surrender," she announced loudly. "Commander Vexlith, we surrender. Power down all systems and open the airlocks." Vexlith wanted to argue, wanted to rage, wanted to refuse, but he looked at Captain Frost's smile, heard the casual chatter of human pilots still talking about where to get lunch after this, and saw the tactical display showing 20 human warships in perfect formation around his crippled vessel. "We surrender," he whispered. "Excellent choice," Frost said, clapping her hands together. "My Marines will be with you in about 90 seconds. Please have your crew assemble in your main cargo bay with hands, claws, tentacles, or whatever you have visible and empty. Anyone holding a weapon will be considered hostile. Anyone trying to be a hero will be considered stupid. We clear?" "Clear," Vexlith said, his voice hollow. "Wonderful. See you soon, Commander. This is going to be great." The screen went dark. 60 seconds later the humans arrived. The human Marines did not break down the airlock. They did not cut through with plasma torches. They did not breach with explosives. They knocked. 3 polite knocks on the external door, like they were visiting a neighbor. Then they waited exactly 5 seconds before the door unlocked itself, because of course the humans had already hacked the access codes, and a dozen armored figures poured through with weapons raised and movements so fluid it looked choreographed. It probably was choreographed. The humans seemed to choreograph everything. Within 2 minutes every Krolix warrior aboard the Crimson Talon was disarmed, restrained with some kind of flexible plastic bindings, and herded into the cargo bay. The humans were professional, efficient, and not a single shot was fired. Vexlith found himself sitting on the deck plating next to Cythera, watching as human engineers swarmed through his ship like they owned it. Which, he supposed, they did now. Captain Frost arrived 20 minutes later, stepping through the cargo bay doors like she was touring a museum. She had removed her helmet, revealing a face that looked far too kind to belong to someone who had just destroyed a Kralix battle group without breaking a sweat. She walked directly to Vexlith, pulling up a cargo container to sit on so she could look him in the eye. "So," she said conversationally, "did you know about the warning?" Vexlith said nothing. "I am going to take that as a yes," Frost continued. "Which means you knew about the rule. You knew about the consequences, and you decided to attack a human outpost anyway. I am curious, Commander. What exactly were you trying to prove? That you are not special," Vexlith muttered. "That humans are just another species. That the galaxy's fear is based on exaggeration and propaganda." Frost nodded slowly. "Okay. And how did that work out for you?" Vexlith's scales flushed dark purple with shame. "Here is the thing, Commander," Frost said, her voice losing some of its cheerfulness. "The rule is not about us being special. It is not about us being superior or invincible or scary. The rule exists because humans are, and I want you to really hear this, absolutely terrible at proportional response." She stood up, pacing in front of the assembled Kralix prisoners. "You want to know what happened to the Zelthron? They kidnapped one scientist. We sent a negotiation team. The Zelthron killed the negotiation team. So we sent a military task force. The Zelthron destroyed the task force. And then, Commander, then humanity stopped playing nice. We did not just defeat them. We erased them. Completely. Their entire civilization gone in 6 months. Not because we are cruel, but because once you make humans actually angry, we do not have an off switch." She stopped in front of Vexlith again. "The Caraxes swarm. They refused to leave a planet we had legally claimed. We asked nicely. They attacked our diplomats. We asked less nicely. They killed a colony ship with 3,000 civilians aboard. So we hunted down every single Caraxes warrior. We dismantled their hive structure, and we turned their entire species into a cautionary tale. Not because we enjoyed it, but because they would not stop." Frost crouched down to Vexlith's eye level. "We do not want to be the monsters, Commander. We really truly do not. That is why the rule exists. That is why we put up warning beacons. That is why we broadcast those messages. We are trying to save you from us, but we are just one ship," Vexlith said desperately. "One attack on one outpost. Surely that does not warrant—" "It does not," Frost interrupted. "That is why you are still alive. That is why your crew is sitting here restrained instead of floating in space. You attacked us, and we stopped you. And now you get to go home and tell everyone exactly what happened." She stood up, signaling to her Marines. "You are going to be our message, Commander Vexlith. You are going to go back to the Kralix Dominion, and you are going to tell them that the warnings are real, that the rule is absolute, and that humanity is not something you test out of curiosity or boredom or pride." Vexlith felt something inside him break. Not his body, but something deeper. His certainty, his confidence, his entire understanding of where the Kralix stood in the galactic hierarchy. "What are you going to do with us?" he asked quietly. Captain Frost smiled her terrifyingly kind smile. "That, Commander, is an excellent question, and you are really not going to like the answer." 3 days later, Vexlith stood in front of a human tribunal aboard the UASC Retribution, and learned that humans had a very particular sense of justice that somehow managed to be both merciful and absolutely devastating. The Unified Earth Space Command finds you guilty of unauthorized military action against human territory, attempted kidnapping, theft of resources and general stupidity, announced Judge Advocate Patricia Chen, a severe-looking woman with gray hair, and reading glasses that made her look like someone's grandmother. "However, given that this is your first offense and you did surrender when given the opportunity, we are inclined toward leniency." Vexlith felt a tiny spark of hope. "Your ship and all military equipment will be confiscated and sold at auction, with proceeds going to the Outpost Bellerophon Employee Trauma Fund." Chen continued. "Your crew will be repatriated to Kralix space with a formal warning. You, however, Commander Vexlith, have a choice." She pulled out a datapad. "Option 1. You spend the next 15 standard years in a human detention facility. We have very nice facilities. Educational programs, job training, 3 meals a day. It is actually quite pleasant if you do not mind being bored to death." Vexlith's scales rippled with disgust. 15 years in a cage. "Option 2, Chen said, her eyes glinting with something that might have been amusement. "You become our official ambassador of consequences. You will travel the galaxy, visiting any species that seems interested in testing human patience, and you will explain to them exactly why that is a bad idea. You will give lectures, you will answer questions, You will show them recordings of your defeat, and you will do this for 5 years, after which you will be free to return home. It took Vexlith approximately 3 seconds to realize that option 2 was infinitely worse than option 1. You want me to humiliate myself publicly across the entire galaxy? He asked. We want you to save lives, Captain Frost said from her seat in the corner, including Krolek's legs. Because let me tell you, Commander, your people are prideful. Sooner or later, another Krolek's warrior is going to have the same bright idea you did, and if you are not there to stop them, we will have to. And we would really prefer not to. Chen nodded. You have 1 hour to decide. Vexlith looked at Cythera, who sat in the gallery watching the proceedings. Her scales had returned to a healthier gray color, and she looked at him with something that might have been pity. He thought about 15 years in a cell. He thought about his crew returning home without him. He thought about the shame of capture, the loss of his ship, the complete destruction of his military career. Then he thought about having to stand in front of the Galactic Council and explain how 47 Krolek's warriors with superior technology got absolutely demolished by humans in under 5 minutes. I will do it, he said quietly. I will be your ambassador. Excellent, Chen said, stamping something on her datapad. Someone get this man a safety vest. A what? Vexlith asked. 10 minutes later, Vexlith stood in front of a mirror, wearing the most humiliating garment he had ever seen. It was bright orange, covered in reflective strips, and had words written across the back in Earth English. Official Human Interaction Warning Ambassador. Below that in smaller letters, ask me why attacking humans is a bad idea. The vest is non-negotiable, Frost explained, trying very hard not to laugh. Visibility is important for safety. We need other species to see you coming and know immediately what you represent. I look ridiculous, Vexlith said flatly. You look visible, Frost corrected. Also yes, a little ridiculous. But that is kind of the point. People remember ridiculous. They do not remember boring diplomatic warnings. They do remember the giant alien warrior in the safety vest who tells them about getting his teeth kicked in by humans. She handed him a datapad. Here is your itinerary for the next 5 years. You will start with the Galactic Council, then move on to the Krolek's Dominion. Then we have bookings at 17 different species homeworlds, 23 military academies, and 4 interstellar conferences. Questions. Vexlith had many questions, none of which would change his situation. Can I at least remove the vest when I sleep? He asked desperately. Nope, Frost said cheerfully. Part of the sentence. Sorry, Commander. We did offer you the prison option. The Galactic Council chamber fell absolutely silent when Vexlith walked in wearing his safety vest. High Chancellor Morpheus's 7 eyes talks locked onto him with expressions ranging from shock to horror to barely suppressed glee. The assembled representatives from 200 species stared at the Krolek's warrior who had managed to do the impossible. He had bothered the humans and survived. Though looking at him now, several representatives questioned whether survival was the right word. Commander Vexlith of the Krolek's Dominion, Morpheus announced formally, though his voice quivered with something that might have been amusement. You stand before this council as the first being to violate Protocol 777 and live to tell about it. The council recognizes you and grants you the floor. Vexlith stepped forward, his orange vest reflecting the chamber's lights like a beacon of shame. Behind him, a human technician set up a holographic projector. Honorable council members, Vexlith began, his voice steady despite his internal screaming. I am here to deliver a message from the Unified Earth Space Command, and to provide testimony regarding my recent encounter with human military forces. A planarian delegate, a species known for their diplomatic tact, raised one crystalline appendage. Commander, before you begin, I must ask, is the vest truly necessary? Yes, Vexlith said through gritted teeth. It is part of my sentence. I am required to wear it at all times during my 5-year term as Ambassador of Consequences. Someone in the back of the chamber laughed. Then someone else. Within seconds, the entire council chamber was filled with the various sounds of 200 species trying very hard not to laugh at a Krolek's warrior in a reflective safety vest. The Krolek's delegation, 12 of his own species seated in the front row, looked like they wanted to disintegrate on the spot. Their scales had gone completely white, the Krolek's equivalent of mortified horror. Ambassador Krelth, the senior Krolek's representative, stood slowly. Commander Vexlith, on behalf of the Krolek's Dominion, I must ask. Why? Why did you do this? Because I believed the warnings about humans were exaggerated, Vexlith said simply. I was wrong. I was incredibly, catastrophically, cosmically wrong. He activated the holographic projector. The recorded footage of his battle with the human fleet began to play. The council watched in absolute silence as Vexlith's warship was systematically dismantled in under 5 minutes. They watched human pilots treat combat like a sporting event. They watched Captain Frost smile while destroying a Kralix battle group. They watched everything. When the footage ended, Morpheus spoke into the silence. The council moves to update Protocol 777. All in favor of increasing warning severity and expanding the exclusion zone around human space. 200 hands, claws, tentacles, and appendages rose simultaneously. Motion passes unanimously, Morpheus declared. Commander Vexlith, you may continue your educational tour. The council thanks you for your service, inadvertent though it may be. As Vexlith left the chamber, he could hear the whispers following him. The Kralix, so proud, so mighty, had been reduced to a galactic punchline. And he was the proof, walking around in a safety vest that probably violated 17 different fashion laws. His people would never forgive him. History would remember him as the idiot who proved humans were exactly as dangerous as advertised, but he would also save lives. Probably, hopefully. The safety vest itched. 6 months into his ambassadorial tour, Vexlith returned to his assigned quarters on a neutral space station to find a package waiting for him. It was from Earth. He opened it cautiously, half expecting some kind of human trap or prank. Instead, he found a wicker basket filled with exotic fruits, a box of something called chocolates, and a handwritten card. The card read, "Dear Commander Vexlith, heard you were doing great work educating the galaxy. Keep up the good fight. You are saving lives and making the universe a safer place. Thanks for being a good sport about the vest. Sincerely, Captain Helena Frost and the crew of the UASC Retribution. P.S. The chocolates are safe for Kralix biology. We checked." Vexlith stared at the card for a full minute, trying to process the fact that the humans who had destroyed his career, confiscated his ship and sentenced him to 5 years of public humiliation had sent him a fruit basket and thank you note, and they had checked to make sure the candy would not poison him. That was humans in a nutshell, was it not? They would absolutely destroy you if you threatened them, then send you a care package afterward because they felt bad about it. He tried one of the chocolates. It was delicious, which somehow made everything worse. His datapad chimed with an incoming message. Another speaking engagement, this time at the Corvellian Military Academy. Young officers who needed to understand why the phrase "how dangerous could humans really be" should never be spoken aloud. Vexlith looked at his reflection in the mirror. 6 months of wearing the vest. 4.5 years to do. He had given 47 lectures, done 12 media interviews, and appeared on one incredibly popular late-night talk show where the host had spent 20 minutes making jokes about his tactical decisions. The vest still itched, but he had also received messages from 3 different species thanking him for his warnings. 2 military commanders had called off planned raids on human outposts after hearing his testimony. One young Kralix officer had sent him a private message saying Vexlith's honesty had saved his life by preventing him from making the same mistake. Maybe, just maybe, this punishment was not entirely about humiliation. Maybe the humans had actually meant what they said about saving lives. Vexlith ate another chocolate and prepared his presentation for the Corvellian cadets. Meanwhile, in a different part of the galaxy, a Thexian warlord named Crexus watched a recording of Vexlith's testimony and laughed. Humans, Crexus scoffed to his officers. The Kralix were always weak. We Thexians are true warriors. These humans think they can frighten us with safety vests and fruit baskets. His tactical officer, a younger Thexian with more sense than ambition, spoke carefully. Sir, the data supports the warnings. Every species that has challenged humans has either been destroyed or humiliated. Data can be falsified, Crexus said dismissively. The galaxy has grown soft, accepting human dominance without question. It is time someone showed these pink creatures their place. He pulled up a star chart, highlighting a small human research station on the edge of explored space. Prepare the fleet, Crexus ordered. We attack in 3 days. His officers exchanged worried glances but said nothing. In Thexian culture, questioning a warlord's orders was a quick path to execution. The tactical officer quietly updated his personal files and sent a copy to his family, just in case he did not return. He also drafted a message to the Galactic Council requesting information on how to apply for a position as Ambassador of Consequences. He had a feeling the job was about to have an opening. Somewhere on Earth, in a military command center, an alert pinged on a monitoring station. A young analyst looked at the data, sighed and forwarded it up the chain of command with a note. Here we go again. Captain Helena Frost read the report over her morning coffee. shook her head and pressed the fleet-wide alert. All ships, this is Retribution Actual. We have another genius testing the rule. Battle Group 7, you are up. Try to bring this one back alive. We are running low on safety vests and I would hate to have to order more. Across human space, 20 warships began moving toward Thexian territory. The galaxy's one absolute rule remained unchanged: never disturb the humans. Some species learned this the easy way, by listening to warnings. Others learned it the hard way, by becoming warnings. And a very special few learned it by becoming walking, talking, safety vest-wearing warnings that traveled the galaxy, preventing others from making the same mistakes. Vexlith finished his chocolate, picked up his presentation materials and headed to the lecture hall. The vest still itched, but the chocolates were really very good. Behind him, his datapad chimed again. Another message from Earth. Another care package notification. This time it was cookies. The humans, Vexlith had learned, took very good care of their ambassadors, even the involuntary ones.